Alrighty, so welcome everyone to this time together where we will be hearing from Krista, who is the manager of fund development at Huron Women's Shelter and Second Stage Housing and Counseling Services. Before Krista, I believe you were working more closely with the second stage portion of the program. Now this talk came out of a joint mission that the Brussels and Blythe the United Churches collected for the women's shelter, and in dropping them off to Krista at the shelter and getting in conversation with her, I learned quite a bit about just how the programs are running during this time of COVID and what needs there will be coming out of the pandemic. And I figured this would be something that should probably be shared with the wider community. So again, thank you all so much for hopping on today on this lovely day. Why don't we start with just a little bit of prayer before I hand it over to Krista. So let us pray. Loving God, we give you thanks for this opportunity to gather on this day, for the ability to share wisdom and insight, for the ability to share compassion and support with one another. Lord, we know one of our greatest calls is to care for those most vulnerable in our community. And from our time today, may we learn how to best live out this call in our local communities and in the wider community. Lord, all these things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so I'm going to mute everyone except for Krista. All right, you should be able to unmute there, Krista. There we go. And I will hand things over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. I know it's really nice outside, so you want to get going, so I'll try to be quick. I just want to let you know that we really appreciated all the donations that were sent in. That helps us immensely, so thank you very much. A little bit about me. I have lived in Huron County all my life. I grew up in Seaforth. Actually went to Walton Public School. It isn't there anymore, I don't think. I've lived in Exeter now for 25 years, and I am a grandma of 3 little ones. So that's kind of a little bit about me. I have 1 son, 3 babies. So that's the personal side. I have worked in Huron and Perth counties for my entire career. I worked actually in community living for right out of college in South Huron, and then went to St. Mary's Community Living. And then I decided to go back to school in 2006. So I got my social service worker diploma, and then I started at the women's shelter at 1 day a week, and it just kind of gradually grew to a full-time position. And I always worked in second stage housing. So that's one of our residential programs. So I worked there for 15 years. And then last August decided to try something new. So I became the manager of fund development. So in total, I've been here at the agency for 15 years. It's really helped that I've worked in another program. So I know a lot about the shelter. I know a lot about the second stage programs. So that's helped me in the new role. It actually is a brand new role. We've never had anyone in the fundraising department. So it's kind of interesting breaking ground there. And I love that I get to go out and meet people. So that's a little bit about me and my role here. I was going to just review a little bit about our services, so everybody knows what we do here. So our shelter has been in business for 36 years, and our second stage buildings have been up for 30 years. We have an emergency shelter. So that's where Alex came and Emily and dropped off the donations. So our shelter is right in Goderich. We're mandated for 10 beds. Right now during COVID, we're around 4 just to maintain the social distancing. Now, if we had a 5th woman call, we definitely would take her in. We're just trying to add some of that social distance for them so they can be safe in the shelter. So at the shelter, it's for high risk women, women that are at high risk of gender-based violence. So that could be somebody stalking them. If she is just leaving a relationship, that's the most high risk time for a woman in that type of situation. We take women and children at the shelter, and that includes male children, of course. It's 24 hours staffed. So we have like a crisis counselor here at the front desk who can help the women connect to services if they need help with the kids, just somebody to talk to, that type of thing. It is more of a communal living situation. So they share a living room, they share a kitchen, but they have their own bedrooms at the shelter. So that's a bit about the shelter. They're provided the food, and their average stay at the shelter right now is about 3 to 4 months. It's a bit of a break, get them back on their feet a little bit, connect them to other services in the community, that type of thing. Then we have our second stage housing program, which is where I worked. So that's for women and children who are at medium to low risk of gender-based violence. So the difference there is the shelter is 24-hour staff, second stage is not. And second stage is more independent living. So in second stage, for instance, we have a building in Exeter, Clinton, and Goderich. So they have their own apartment in those buildings. So in Exeter, we have 6 apartments. In Clinton, we have 6 apartments. And then in Goderich, we have 10. So it's a bit bigger. They pay their rent, but it's geared to their income. So it's generally around 30% of their income. That's very reasonable compared to, I know my own son, he's paying like $1,000 for rent for a 1 bedroom. Whereas ours is geared to their income. So it's very economical for the women. And that includes their heat and their hydro in their rent amount. What else can I say about that? We have accessible units in each building. It's secured entry, of course. Staff then come to that building to support the women. So a staff person could be working with someone in Exeter, someone in Clinton, and someone in Goderich, and they travel to the women and stop in at the building and meet with them to connect them to services or, you know, talk about how they're doing. Second stage, you can stay for up to 4 years. The government just changed that recently. It was a 1-year program, but now you can stay up to 4 years. Our general stay nowadays is, you know, a 1.5 years, 2 at the most. We try to get people connected to other services because then if we don't, there's no room for other women to come in. So that's a bit about that. As I said, it's a bit more independent. So they, you know, they furnish their own apartments. They don't come furnished. They make their own meals, that type of thing. It's a way for a woman to get back on her feet. Some women go back to work. Some people go back to school. Or they may work with a counselor to work on self-esteem, the effects of gender-based violence, those type of things. All of our residential programs, so the shelter and second stage, are pet friendly. More recent for the shelter, second stage has been pet friendly for several years, but the shelter was a few years ago, we started taking pets in. which has been very nice for women, and particularly kids when they're already, in a bad situation, and then we would have had to say, well, you can't bring your pet with you. Now they can bring their animals, and that's made a world of difference for the kids and the moms. You don't want to break those kids from their animal at that kind of time. And sometimes women, the animal itself is abused by the abuser. So the woman doesn't want to leave because she has to leave her pet. So that's been a real positive for us. We also have a crisis line. So that is a phone that's monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Someone can call, whether she wants to get connected to, let's say, Canadian Mental Health or addictions or that type of service. She can call if she's just, having a bad day and needs someone to talk to. She could call and ask about services for children. Also, it can be a crisis where staff are highly trained to do a risk assessment, and then they will call the appropriate people if needed. Or they could be doing an intake to bring her to shelter. So if that was the case, we do offer transportation for women. If they, let's say, were in Exeter and they needed to get to the shelter, then they would give her a cab and bring her in. They do like a risk assessment to find out what her level of risk is, and then would connect her with the right service. I forgot to mention too, for second stage, it's more of a little bit of more of a process. So you have to fill out an application. People have to do an intake with the coordinator and that type of thing. So it's somewhat like having, when you do an application for an apartment, that's kind of what it's like. And we do that because we want to have people that are going to maintain the safety protocols in the building. So no men, you can't be having men in the building because that is not appropriate in second stage. Then we have an outreach counselor. So Susan, our outreach counselor, goes and travels around Huron County. So she may meet women in Exeter at the second stage building. Sometimes we've met women in churches and they do their counseling there, or the employment centers, that type of thing. And Susan works with women who are experiencing gender-based violence. So she will help them through the effects of that. She could be helping them to work on self-esteem, meditation, relaxation, those types of things, anything that will help her get through and get back on her feet. So that's offered in all of Huron County. Women often call in and ask for counseling, and then Susan is connected with that woman. We also have sexual assault counseling. So women that have experienced rape or sexual abuse, and that can be past abuse, like in their childhood. We have a counselor that works with those women. We also have a court support program worker. So this is a great program because family court, some of the documents and that you have to fill out for that is very difficult and challenging, particularly when you're not feeling that well yourself, to try and get through that. So Carol, our court support program worker, will help with those documents. And she can also go to court, maybe not now during COVID, but once that's over, she can go just as a support person for the woman. I do remember at one point I filled in for someone in that program, and I just went with the woman and I held her child because she had no other family to go with her for court. So that can be a help too. And then we have child and youth counseling. So that's for children 5 to 18 years of age. And we have 2 counselors for that program. And they work with kids that have witnessed gender-based violence. And oftentimes we think, you know, children don't see, if they don't see the fighting, that it doesn't affect them, but it really does. And Callie and Janelle work with those kids to, um, you know, get through that. And they will meet them at school if that's what the children would like. Sometimes kids don't want that. They want it outside the school because they don't want their friends asking them what they're doing with that counselor. But it's whatever the kids are comfortable with. Kelly and Janelle will meet them in school, or they might meet them at second stage, or again at the employment centers or the churches in the area. So that's a wonderful program too. So that's all of our programs that we have at Huron Women's Shelter. Did you want to do questions now, or do you want to wait till the end?
I think we're okay to wait until the end.
Okay. So our funding is provided by the Ministry of Community and Social Services. We do get a little bit of funding from United Way and Huron County, of course, with our second stage program, that's the residential program. And the Ministry of Health funds some of our sexual assault counseling. But we do also depend greatly on our fundraising income, which is why they hired a fundraising person. And some of the, I guess I'll just go over some of the things that we have noticed since COVID. So of course, we have noticed a great increase in the number of calls that we're getting on our crisis line. Generally, it's like 800 calls per year. So we're getting a lot more calls. And with that, we're also getting a lot more intensity and risk in the calls. And if you can think of why that is, why some of that is because if a woman is home with an abuser, whether that be male or female abuser, now they're home 24 hours a day, sometimes together, because before the abuser went to work and she had a break from that. Or she was able to get out of the house once that person went to work and get her counseling, those type of things. The other thing that we've heard from women is COVID has really restricted them in the fact that, as I said, they often went to the employment center or the library, those kind of things, and they would say, I'm going to the library, but really they were going to do their counseling session. So they've been cut off from the support people. And also with the social distancing, we're not supposed to be visiting people. So often, family are your greatest support if you can't go see those people to be safe and talk about what's going on. That's isolated them further. And then if that wasn't enough, you add the kids being home with the extra stress and the financial burdens of, not being able to go to work. Some people have lost their jobs, obviously, so that increases the stress in the house. So those are the things that we've kind of noticed. One of the positive things, because I think there always is positive in something, in some way. And I would say that although COVID has been really difficult for our agency, it has brought us a clearer vision of what we need to do and where we needed to kind of adjust services to provide better service to women. So one of those things was we always worked in two different teams. So there was second stage team and there was the shelter team. So now we have restructured our staff. So we're all working with all women. So it's not, I will work with second stage anymore. It's I work out of the shelter, but I'll go to second stage. And we're also working with a lot of women that aren't even in our residential programs. So they don't have to come to shelter. They don't have to come to second stage. We'll work with them in the community, which has been wonderful. So right now we have over 70 women in community that we're working with, that we're connecting with, that aren't actually in our residential program, but they're getting the counseling. They may come to the shelter to get a care package. They may come and get sexual assault counseling, those type of things. So really opening the services to women that they don't have to be in the residential programs to get our service, which is wonderful. We now have a different schedule for our staff. So there's often, well, there is staff that are working together. So it's not so isolating for staff. Previously, there was only one staff on at the shelter, one staff on at second stage. So if there were crisis, you were it. So that was very isolating for staff. Particularly like when I worked in Exeter, most staff are this way in Goderich. So you were very isolated in those buildings. So now we have usually double staff at the shelter so they can collaborate together, which is a really good thing when you're thinking about women at high risk, because you don't want to be making those kind of decisions when somebody's alone, when somebody's life is at risk. So that's been a wonderful positive thing out of this COVID. It made us look at things. Right now, the most of the staff, like admin staff like myself, are working remotely because we don't need to be in the building as much. But the staff that are on front line that work directly with the women are coming in. Second stage people, again, staff are popping into those buildings to work with the women. And the counseling due to COVID is online like this, like Zoom. I think at this point, women are getting used to it. It was a little difficult at first, just to, teach how to use Zoom, getting people comfortable with that. And we also have to be very careful because if she's at home, it's kind of challenging to do the counseling, particularly if the abuser is there. So sometimes they have to do it by phone where she can kind of move out into a different room. But we do what we can. We've gotten quite creative in high risk situations. We've met women in their driveway, just to touch base with her and maybe do some safety planning with her. If that's not a familiar word, safety planning is around, so what is she going to do when the abuse starts, those type of things. So she might have a friend that has, a bag for her, or she might have a bag packed in her car already so that she's ready to leave if she needs to leave. She'll, staff will talk to her about having the kids' documents, their birth certificates, those type of things ready, some extra money, if she can do that, put aside to get a cab or to just have a little bit of money in her pocket. She might have a safe word with a neighbor. So if she calls and says this word, she's not okay and they need to call the police. Those type of things, that's what we do when we safety plan with women. And the counselors also safety plan with children. So that might be when this happens with mom and the person, what can you do to keep yourself safe? Those kind of things. And kids often have safety words too, that they can use. So those are just different types of things that we do with women and kids. So that's kind of our COVID, the changes that we've made in that. I did have a few numbers that I could share with you. So this is 2020 numbers, obviously. So in shelter, we provided service to 77 women and 24 children. In second stage, we had 37 women and 46 kids. There is a lot of kids in second stage housing. And then community, as I said, we have over 70 women that we're working with. The average crisis calls, we had 900 in 2020. And then something else that we do that I haven't mentioned is care packages. So we give out a lot of care packages. So in those packages, there might be food items, right? I'm out of milk. I'm out of baby formula. I don't have any diapers. I need a coat for my child. Those kind of things. If we have it at the shelter, we will put it together in a box for a woman, call it a care package. Sometimes what we do is we put personal hygiene products in it. It kind of depends on what the need is at the time. And we also are trying to put in a gift card if we can, because sometimes we don't have the right kind of formula, like Similac, or, if a baby needs that type of thing. So we'll put a gift card in so that she can go and get it at least. Sometimes we get calls where a woman is to come for counseling, but she doesn't have gas money to get here. So we would give her a gas card. And with our staff traveling, it's a little easier to drop off. So for instance, I drive to Goddard, from Exeter. So if somebody is in need in Exeter, I can bring it back and leave it at the second stage building for them, that kind of thing. We also have been putting a little bit of, like the personal protection equipment. So like sometimes the wipes and cleaners, because that's an extra thing for a woman to buy too. Some women didn't have, the money to get those kind of things. And masks, we've been putting those in as well. So far in 2021, we've already given out 51 care packages. So that's pretty important for our women. So as I mentioned, we do have a little bit of funding, but we rely heavily on our fundraising. So last year, due to COVID, we basically had to cancel all of our events. We had the Arts and Crafts, which is our largest fundraising event, canceled, and then our Inspiring Women, which is a lovely, lovely event. It's dinner, and women are nominated in the community and honored. So that was canceled. And then usually we have Huron song choirs that do fundraising for us too, and that was canceled as well. So, and I'm not sure about our craft show this year. We haven't quite decided yet. It's in July, so we're kind of crossing our toes and fingers and everything else that it can go through, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm not sure yet. So ways to help. I guess for women, what I would say is the most important thing for a woman is that you believe her when she tells you her story. And one of the other ways that you could help is connecting her to our services. So giving her our 1-800 number. I can give you like a little handout after if you'd like that. I could send that to you, Alex. Just outlining some of the information because it's a lot.
Yeah, sure.
And I can have our number put on it, and you could connect her to our crisis line, and then also our website. There's different resources on our website that might be helpful to her. You could offer to give her a ride if that's something that you could do. or help out with the kids as well. But the one thing that's the most important, I think, is, believing what she's telling you and encouraging her to get some support for sure. Ways to donate, or, to help us. There's donations on the website. You can donate by e-transfer, donate by mail. The other thing that we do, as I said, we get donations of gift cards, which is helpful because it also gives the woman choice, which is empowering for her. I know at Christmas time, the women loved that they could go out and get what their kids actually wanted for gifts. So that was lovely. Yeah, those are just different kinds of, sometimes people don't think about gas cards or phone cards. Those kind of things are helpful. And we always, always, always can use shampoo, deodorant, soap. Because when women come to shelter, they often come with nothing. So we're, doing a little basket when they come into their bedroom. So they'll have, the basics. And the other thing we do is when women move into second stage, we do a little, welcome basket. So it'll have personal hygiene products. It'll have, if we know the kids well enough, we'll put in things that the kids like. We often put in shower curtains because people forget shower curtains and there are none. Little things like glasses or bowls, that type of thing, because they do not come furnished. So they will need all those things when they move into second stage. So that's some of the things that can help us. I also included, we do have a couple of funds for our agency, which most people are not aware of. So I thought I would mention those. There's the Lomas Harris Fund, and it's for pet care. So when women bring their pets, if they're not vaccinated, we will help out with that. So we actually have a fund for that. And then there's the Carly Lomas Fund. So Carly Lomas was a young woman who lived in Goderich, and when she passed away, she asked that there be a fund set up for women and young girls who are struggling to meet their educational goals. So this fund helps them to do that. So it may pay for a college application, or if they want to take first aid, or if they safe food handling course, anything that will help them or textbooks, right? Because they're very expensive. So we do have that fund. And another exciting program that we just started, and COVID's kind of put a damper on this, but it will get going. We no longer accept used clothing. So I was trying to figure out how we could, because I love used clothing. I would take it, but we can't do that at the shelter. So, and I know we have a lot of donors that want to give us used clothing. So I was trying to make everyone happy, and I think we've got it. There is a consignment shop in Lucknow called I Want That Bag. And Danielle is super fantastic. She owns the store, and what she has done is opened us an account. So the Huron Women's Shelter has an account, and people can go in and then donate their clothes to our account, and then we will get the funds from those clothes being sold. So that's how we're kind of trying to, and it's a win-win. It's people get rid of the stuff they don't want. Danielle gets, the business, and we also benefit from the program. So that we launched it in April, but we can't, the store is obviously closed right at this moment, but Danielle's excited when the store opens. We can start doing that. And I have a little, outline of people. So when they call in and say, I have used clothing, because at second stage, we used to get tons of donations, particularly in Exeter. I know a lot of people in Exeter, so that might be why. Yeah, so it's something that people can give their clothes to that instead of here. We do take new clothing here. We can't take a lot, but it helps to have, you know, new underwear, those kind of things, new socks, pajamas for women and children, but only new. So that's pretty much all I had. That's a lot.
That's a lot, but it's all fantastic information. Krista, thank you so much. This is obviously a very difficult time for the shelter and second stage and all the women who use those services, but we are just so thankful that you and everyone there are able to provide those services. Those numbers you gave us, it's, you know, it's hard because those are high numbers and COVID has exacerbated the situation, but you're able to help them, which is fantastic. All right, so I think now's the time for questions, folks. I'll invite everyone to unmute, and if you want to stay muted, that's fine. You can also unmute yourself if you would like to. I think I just muted everyone instead, which is the opposite of what I wanted to happen. But there we go. So if you would prefer to type your questions into the chat box, that's all right too. Or if you are just kind of mulling things over and want to wait until later, I can always get your questions to Krista later on and we can get those answered as well. But I'm just wondering if anyone has any initial questions or comments. Monique asked, is there a waiting list for second stage housing?
You know, it's interesting to me because when I started at second stage, there was never a wait list. But in the last, I would say probably last 4 to 5 years, there has been a wait list for second stage. I mean, that's not good, obviously, but I can say that most second stages have wait lists now, and that's because there also is no like there's very little housing in Huron County and other areas, right? Or reasonable housing, should I say. I mean, when you're asking $1,500 for a 2-bedroom, I don't know how families can do that. It's incredible. Yes, so there is wait lists. And it also, just on top of that, I guess too, like it depends on the area because we have 3 buildings. So there's often more of a wait list for Goderich. I guess because there's more services, you know, Goderich, it's right on the lake. It's a beautiful area, right? So we tend to have a bit more of a longer wait for a Goderich second stage apartment than Clinton or Exeter, but definitely there is a wait list.
I have a question. You mentioned about things used to be manned or womaned by one person in Exeter, one in Goderich, etc. And you changed that so that there were 2 people were involved. I'm just trying to clear my mind. Was this the person in Exeter had a problem to work out, would contact a second person in either Goderich or Clinton, or were there 2 physical bodies in Exeter all the time and 2 in Goderich, etc.? Or how did that work?
No, we I guess when I was explaining that there's usually more staff on together now, that's mainly in the shelter. because we have like a 7 to 3 and 11 to 7, like there's more people working together at the shelter, and then people start at the shelter. Let's say it's me. I would start work at the shelter, and then I might go over to second stage Godrich and work there for an hour with a woman. And then I might go, you know, on my way home, I might stop in Clinton and work with a woman. And then I live in Exeter, so I might stop in Exeter as well, right? And work with a woman. It just depends on the staffing schedule that day, where they're all going. Previous to that, there was always just one staff in shelter at the desk. And she always had to be answering the crisis line. So now if you have 2 or 3 people in the shelter at once, one person can look, you know, be with a woman in the kitchen, baking muffins and talking about how things are going, those kind of things, more natural conversations. And then the other person can answer the phone and deal with that. So it's really helped that way, where a person isn't stuck at a desk and the women are, you're not able to work with them because you're dealing with the crisis situations on the phone. And then in second stage, it'll be varied. So there may be 2 staff there at once working with different women. There might be 1 staff that pops in today, 3 staff that pop in tomorrow. So it's kind of varied. And then we also have our maintenance people that pop in. So they don't provide counseling, but they are there, you know, if there's situations in the buildings, that kind of thing.
So that's all flexible then.
It's very flexible. Whereas before, like when I worked at second stage, I would work at Exeter and I was the only staff there.
But you still have the ability to contact somebody else in one of the other offices, so to speak, and
Yes, yeah.
call in and help if there's a strategic thing that has to be looked after. Okay.
Yes, and as far as safety, like we do have their lanyard alarms. So if there was, you know, a situation, staff have a lanyard with an alarm on it that goes right to our monitoring company. So that is there, and all our buildings have controlled entry as well.
Okay.
How many staff do you have?
Right now we have about 23. Yeah, we're not huge, but
I have another question. All the donations, like, I'm just a little bit curious. You don't have to go into a big long spiel, but all the donations, they go into the women's shelter. So is there like one treasurer that looks after all this? If it's like checks coming in and so on, in terms of bank accounts, or like you've got stuff coming in from the county or from the province or from different people that are on the hook to pay so much a year. Like it must be costly to have 10 apartments in Godrich and only have 4 of them with people in them. You still have to pay the rent. Somebody's got to pay the rent on those, or is there are they getting them at you know, a very low price because of what they're doing, or is I mean, somebody's got to cough up the money for it.
So Huron County, that's where we're connected with Huron County. So Huron County does our subsidizes our residential program. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the women pay like their rent for those apartments, but it is, you know, geared to their income.
Okay.
So it's a lower rent for sure. But yeah, and then we have our financial coordinator, Roberta. So she is a whiz. She is fantastic. She looks after all that kind of funding, and you know, like you have to report on all that. Like when I worked at second stage, we had to report all the income from the rent that the women paid back to the county. I had to report that. Yeah. And then our executive director also looks after, like if we get money from the Ministry of Community and Social Services, we definitely have to report on how we're spending that etc.
Do they allow you so much, like community services or whatever it is? Do they allow you so much a year or a certain percentage, or how does that work?
I'm not as familiar with that piece because Corey looks after that, our executive director, and Roberta. But I do know that they have to do a lot of reporting to the Ministry of Community and Social Services. So I'm not sure whether it's like twice a year or once a year. I can ask Corey that. I don't know that answer.
That's okay. I don't expect you to know everything.
I try. But no, I don't. As far as the donations, like that's the piece that I look after. So I would write tax receipts for any checks that are brought in, those kind of things. We also get in-kind donations. So, you know, if somebody donates gift cards, that kind of thing, I do those receipts.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Asleep.
Emily?
Krista, you said that I understand you only take new clothing. What about for children? Like, do you need things like that, like socks and underwear for kids, or is it mainly just the women?
Oh, absolutely. We'll take it for kids. It's yeah, women and children. It's just we've went to new. Part of that, you know, is COVID, but also we made that decision previous to that to only accept new clothing. And it is helpful because in second stage, we have like racks in each of the buildings in like the community room. So they'll have, you know, donated food, that kind of thing, like non-perishables on those racks. So the women can help themselves to that type of stuff. But we also have like a place for clothing. So underwear, socks, and there's also like deodorant, shampoo, all those kind of things on those racks. So they can help themselves. And then here at the shelter, they have like a, you know, like a closet full of that kind of thing. So when a woman comes, if she has nothing, they will at least have underwear and socks and, you know, tops, that kind of stuff. Slippers.
So like when you get low on one thing, would you like then put it out to the community that says we're really low on little girls' underwear? Or do you just sort of go out and buy it with funds if you don't have it?
We try to not ask too much. You know, we don't want to overload the community with our asks, but periodically we will put out something on Facebook that says, you know, we could really use this. Last year, I know that we had put out a request and we got a tremendous response from the community. And there's always a list on our website of what we need now. So I was thinking of that too when I was preparing for the presentation. So now we're going into summer, right? So sunscreen would be great. Sunscreen is super expensive, right? And so that would help. Sun hats for kids, you know, new sandals, all those kind of things. We can't take like huge, big amounts of donations and like, you know, small household items are okay, like, because as I said, the second stage apartments are unfinished. So, you know, like plates or cups or tea towels or dishcloths or dish soap, that kind of thing is helpful. But we do periodically put something out if we're in need of some items. But we also planned the OPP auxiliary planned on doing like a Stuff the Cruiser event, but that was supposed to be in April. And that's usually very successful. So they park outside the Walmart. And then people can donate. So like, you know, toilet paper, paper towel, pillows, all those kind of things. Yeah, does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
I have one more question. Sorry, Murray, go ahead. Murray?
Well, I don't
Yeah,
think Murray
Don?
was talking, Don.
My question is, do you have a summary? Like, is all the information you just told us, I can't remember everything. Is it on the internet, like under some title that I could go there and then maybe print it off? Or can you provide a summary to Alex so that we
Yes.
could get a copy? Because there's a lot of things that you're involved in.
Mhm.
And it would just be sort of handy to have on the fridge, you know, where it says, okay, for this, for this, for this, that you're involved in that sort of thing. Because 6 months from now, something could pop up and my wife and I might be saying, well, I wonder if they could help or whatever, or maybe that's not in their game, you know?
Exactly. Yes, I can do that because I was thinking that, like, I have 3 pages of information, right? So it's very difficult to remember all that. So yes, I can provide that to Alex.
Yeah.
I'll
Right.
do a summary.
Thank you.
Her notes will be a lot nicer than my chicken scratch that I have here. I guess I have a bit of a question. I mean, and I think we talked about it when Emily and I first dropped off our donations, that, you know, it's the staff you're reorganizing, so it's a lot more flexible and you're able to go out more. But a lot of the resources and housing is still centered on Goderich, Exeter, Clinton. So folks out here, Brussels and Blytheway, is there any particular ways that our communities can help support your program or address any needs that are kind of in the areas that aren't in these main centers?
Well, I think the number one thing is connecting them to our services. So like we also have, I think I gave you some, there's signs with pull-off tabs with our numbers. So that's helpful. If you can put them up around the community, like I know they're in the post office in Exeter a lot of the times, and I'm not, you know, in Blythe and that way. So like public places like the library, just if we could get those out, that would be helpful. I can send you some of those. And we also have pamphlets and that kind of thing. The other thing is, like, what you did was perfect. The drive that you did, right? Asking for shampoo and that type of thing. It's wonderful. The women are so excited when they get those kind of things, right? Or, you know, I can relate to this, getting new tea towels. Last time probably was when I got married, right? It's like, that's always a joy to get new tea towels. It doesn't have to be big. It's wonderful. Or if we can give her $10 so that she can go get, you know, whatever her child wants at Walmart, that kind of thing. It just makes a world of difference. And I think, you know, her being able to go get it is important instead of us always giving her something.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that kind of addresses Margaret's question here. Would it be better to give money so the agency can buy what is needed rather than giving the new items? I think you were mentioning before, kind of the agency of the women being able to buy some of their own items is important.
It's I find it really difficult, that topic, because I know sometimes it's nicer to give something, but I do think that it's important to remember how valuable that is to a woman to be able to independently go to a store and get something that her child really wants or that she really needs. And the other thing I've learned from that is there's all kinds of allergies and sensitivities. And so diet wise, like when we're doing care packages, we have to, you know, now that that's more common, like I can't have milk. Well, that's really expensive, or I can't have gluten. Those kind of things are very expensive if you're on that kind of diet. And that's not something that we would have readily in the shelter. We would have to go out and get that. So yes, cash donations are the best so that we can provide what the women need. It's just, you know, I do know that sometimes it's nicer to give a gift, but do know that we are going to get what the women need for the children if the cash is provided. So. Did you have a question, Sandra?
Yes. No, not a question, just a comment. I knew of a mother who took her child and they went to a shelter. And the traumatic thing for the child was that because she wasn't at home, she wasn't with her friends or at school, but she had been invited to a birthday party and she didn't know how she was going to get to the birthday party or what she was going to bring to the birthday party. And so, and at that time, her mother didn't have the money, but the people in the shelter took the child and they had a room, and the child could go to that room and pick out her own birthday gift that she was going to take to a friend. And that, to this day, she remembers that part of her time going to the shelter.
It's so important. And that's very true. We do have a spot down in the basement in the shelter that we have a lot of toys. So that's another thing. And I mean, also the kids in the shelter have birthdays too, right? So if the mom can't afford to get the child a present, what we will do is take her downstairs and see if there's anything down there that will help. It does mean a lot. The other thing I thought of when I was talking about that is sometimes, like, I don't know if this is an idea, we have had people in the community adopt a family. So they have, for Christmas, they have asked for the, you know, the mom's size, that type of thing, and the kids' sizes, and they've adopted that family. That was a lovely project. We had that this year. So a family in Goderich, she had 4 children, and this family adopted them and got mom presents and all the kids for Christmas. Other things that we've done, the hospital this year did food boxes for all the women in second stage. So they provided a box full of what, you know, non-perishable foods that you would have at Christmas dinner. And then they put a gift card on top just to get the fresh items, which was fantastic. Yeah. So lots of good community supports, lots of good ideas. There's always, I didn't even think of this till today because I got an ask from a staff person. Each second stage building has a garden box, like, you know, those up on ground boxes. So, I mean, dirt, plants, gift cards for dirt and plants, that kind of thing. It's good for the kids. It's very therapeutic for the women. And then they were going to start something here at the shelter too. So I do know that all the second stage buildings have those. It's kind of nice for the kids to see something grow. Yeah, and they can be responsible for weeding it and that kind of thing. And then I'm just shooting out ideas. There's the playrooms. They can always use toys. So yeah, lots of ideas.
Sandra?
I'm full of questions today. If the families go to second stage, and let's say they are from let's see, let's say they're from Walton
Mhm.
and the housing is in Godrich, then the family kids transfer to another school, do they?
Well, they probably would, yeah.
Okay,
Unless mom's gonna, like, we have had moms that have drove their children to their school. Um,
to finish up the season.
but
Okay.
that's a lot of traveling.
Mhm.
But we have had moms that do that because they don't want to disrupt, right? And we've helped them a little bit with the gas and that kind of thing. Because the child is already uprooted from their home, so they didn't want to uproot them from their friends and their school, right?
Yeah.
I guess it just depends, like it's really up to the mom to make that decision. But that is hard. I do remember a mom doing that. Yeah. We need more buildings. That's what we need. But but yeah. I don't know.
I have a question. I just thought of these people that you have 21 or 23 people that are on staff.
23.
Are they all paid staff? Or some people that just donate their time?
No, actually, right, like we've never had a volunteer program. That is something that I will be in charge of once we have to apply for a grant. And right now, because my role is so new, we haven't done that yet. But that is the hope, that we will develop a volunteer program. And then we will have a volunteer coordinator that looks after that. I mean, we have the odd person, like I just completed a direct mail out and I had a few students volunteer to help stuff envelopes, but we don't have like a volunteer program per se. We'd like to set it up well. So we're kind of, waiting until I get my feet in the ground, and then I would be hiring the coordinator for that program. But we also have to apply for a grant because that would be a whole other program, and a whole other position. So we did apply for a grant for that at one point, and then decided we would actually wait and do this first and kind of get everything set. I think that's the better way to do it because you want to do it well when you do it. So, and you have to do a lot of training for volunteers, a lot of screening, and we want to have the roles for them too. You don't want them to lose interest.
Do the people that work for you now, those 23 people, do they have to pass a course, or do they have to be certified, or what's that big word they use? Vetted or something before they can work in the homes or in
Like
the secondary places or anything like that?
like a screening, like a police
Yeah,
check.
yeah.
Yes, we all have to have our police check to work here
Okay.
because we're working with vulnerable people, right? And children.
Right.
Even our maintenance people have to have that.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very important because actually we only have Gary is the only male person on our in our staff, and he's been here probably 5-6 years, but that was something very new. So everyone, like females, males, everyone that works here has to have a police check. And it's very important, particularly, I mean, you have obviously 46 children in our second stage program, so they have to be safe. It's been when I speak of Gary, I think that has been one of the best things that we ever did, because Gary is a good role model, and it's really nice for the children to see a man, and he's so supportive of the women, and a positive influence. And I'm not saying that, you know, it's all men that are abusive, but it is nice for the kids to see that. If they've come from an abusive home where the abuser was a male, it's good to see.
Mhm. All right. Any other questions or comments or? No, I just think this is such valuable information, Krista, and I want to thank you on behalf of the congregations for taking time out of your schedule to chat with us and teach us about, you know, the programs that are ongoing and what's new and what will be happening. I know there's many folks in the congregations who have been supporting these services for years, but it's always good to get a bit of a refresher and find out how we can best help. So yes, we'll be getting out all this information to the congregations. Assuming this recording went well, this will be up on YouTube and other folks will be able to watch it. Yeah, so this would be the point where we give you a big round of applause, Krista, but I find it's not always the best on Zoom, but it is truly appreciated. Again, thank you. If there's any questions that pop up to you in the middle of the night, I can send them along to Krista and hopefully we can get that information to you. But in the meantime, thank you, everyone. Go out and enjoy the rest of this wonderful afternoon. Get back to your gardens and your work, and that's excellent.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
this has been wonderful.
Thank you.
I will, I'll send that information sheet too.
Yeah. So, all
Thanks.
right.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.